Hey everyone, and welcome to our latest developer deep dive for Company of Heroes 3. My name is John. I'm the community manager here on the team, and today we're going to be covering our Orchid Spider update 1.9, which is going to be coming to Company of Heroes 3 on November 26th. Today we're going to cover the new additions to the game, including new maps, and of course the debut of our live observer mode. We'll have a separate live stream on November 26th, the day the update comes out, to cover all the multiplayer changes coming to the game, including the unit distinction work and the new veterancy stuff. So stay tuned for that. But you may get some multiplayer sneak peeks today when we check out the live observer mode. So be sure to stick around. Let's kick things off with our look at Orchid Spider with brand new maps. Let's kick it over to Will. All right, Will, now we are here to talk about maps in Orchid Spider, our 1.9 update. I know you've been diligently working on several improvements for our existing multiplayer map pool. Can you tell us what you have coming in Orchid Spider?
I certainly can. As always, we are gathering feedback on our Discord. If you go and scroll down to the map improvements and map feedback, we have a separate channel for every single one of our multiplayer maps, and we peruse through those and grab the high-ticket items. A bunch of very minor fixes in this one across a load of our 4v4 and 3v3 maps, pathfinding changes, cover improvements, that sort of thing. Some bigger ticket items, we have spent a little bit more time with Pacino Stalemate, which is the 1v1 version, making some further adjustments to the cutoffs on the east side of the map. For those who frequent that map, you'll know that the east side was readjusted to probably have more competitive play, and the fuel points were moved away from the center of the map to that east side to try and draw attention away from strong garrisons like the church overlooking +10 fuels. But we've focused mostly on the actual strategic points this time around and made them a little bit more accessible and a little bit harder to defend.
Okay.
So it's not as easy to lock them down.
And I imagine we'll be keeping an eye on Pacino Stalemate as it is one of those more competitive maps.
Certainly. The 1v1 maps in particular, we know how easily the meta can shift how those maps play. It doesn't take much. So yeah, feedback for 1v1 maps we're always watching. We won't necessarily jump on them too drastically. Like, again, as I said, the meta can change how they play quite drastically, so we don't want to make knee-jerk changes if we can help it.
Okay.
But yeah, as always, any feedback is very, very welcome. And there's been some changes to the two new maps that we brought into the last update. So there's been some pathfinding improvements on Longstop Hill. Just general improvements, just to make vehicle flow around the map a little easier. And there were some very odd cases where there were some hedgerows that had small gaps in them that the AI would try and climb into. The AI loves nooks. It loves a little hole to hide in.
Yeah.
So we found some cases of squads just clustered into a small hedgerow. And on Road to Primasol, we're very aware that there was some feedback about the access routes into the manor up the hill. So the first thing we've done is try to make access to those areas a little easier. The east side of the map in particular had a retaining wall that was probably too obstructive, so we've kind of cleaved the corner off that. And we've made sure that the outer perimeter for the manor itself has far more medium crush access points.
Okay.
So as soon as you get an 8 rad or a Stewart, that whole portion of the map can open up way easier, which was highly requested.
Okay.
I think those are the main items, though.
Okay, and like you said, folks can continue leaving us feedback in the map feedback section of the official Discord, and we'll I'm sure you're keeping an eye on that every day.
Every day.
but of course, we have two brand new maps coming in our Orchid Spider update, and I know the 4v4 crowd will be pretty excited about this first one. Will, what have you got for us here?
Yes, so this is another map that's been in my back pocket for a long time. This is Rapido River Crossing. The Rapido River Crossing is one of the most famous events in the battle for Italy. It's notorious. It had quite a few legal disputes afterwards as well because of the way that it was commanded. For those who don't have the history of this, not long after the landings at Salerno, there was a push to try and secure rivers as far north as they possibly could. Um, Funnily enough, the Rapido River crossing wasn't actually the Rapido River, if I'm not mistaken. It was the Gary River, but it's known through history as the Rapido River, regardless of whether it's accurate or not.
Yeah.
And it's the story of the 36th US Infantry, who had taken significant losses at Salerno and were strangely, bizarrely chosen for this extremely dangerous river crossing, despite being under-equipped and despite lacking the manpower to make the push. This was a very well-defended river crossing. It was an absolute bloodbath. I think they took something near 2,000 casualties, including those missing or captured. And despite the fact that they did manage to make the river crossing and secure a small portion on the other side of the river, they were bombarded so heavily they had to pull back anyway. So they made the crossing twice.
Right.
So it's a bit of a grave story, but it's one of those famous battlefields that I couldn't wait to bring to Company of Heroes 3.
Yeah. At first glance, this is a really phenomenal looking map. And we should note this is coming to all game modes again, so everyone will be able to enjoy it.
Absolutely.
So Will, can you maybe tell me about your approach to how you design this map?
Yes, so as we always say, we want to add a bit of diversity to our map pool, add something that's a little bit different. This Rapido crossing is quite possibly the longest map we have. It's not the narrowest, but it's the longest map. So the distance from your HQs to the center point is at least 50 meters longer than other maps.
Okay.
Which will change gameplay. It means that things like transportation, towing, and forward reinforce are far more important than normal. And because it's a river crossing map, it means that there's a significant portion of the map that has no cover, right through the very middle of it. It's probably worth noting for those who hear river crossing and start panicking, there's no bridges on this map. It is a shallow river crossing, so you can basically cross the entire length of the river.
Right.
But because it is water, there's no significant cover to speak of. So you have strong positions on your side of the river, and you have cover on the enemy side of the river, but you have to make that crossing to secure the resources and win the game. So it's quite a different map in how it flows.
Right. And if the map is longer, will that make things like reinforcement a bit of a something that players need to keep in mind, or might be a little bit more challenging?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually something that Co-1 players will be more familiar with, because Co-1 lacked a lot of the forward reinforce that Co-2 brought in. A lot of the map designs in Co-1 were based around the retreat time being an important factor in enabling you to capture the rest of the map while your enemy is absent. So if you can force a mass retreat, you have the time to then secure positions, lock them down, build sandbags, build mines, that sort of thing. So this is a map that is very much an homage to that, almost like a montageous region in terms of length from Co-1 for those who are familiar. Not the Co-2 version. So if you aren't careful and you end up having a mass retreat, then you should expect that your enemy will cross the river and will start securing your side. They have to watch their backs because they can't fall back unless they want to step into the river with no cover again. So there's some dangers. But yeah, things like forward reinforce on your resource caches, things like half tracks and ambulances and medical vehicles are going to be extremely important, and making sure that you help out the teammate next to you. If they start getting double teamed, if they give way, you've suddenly got a huge gap in your line that won't get filled in for another minute at least. So it's going to be a very challenging map for sure.
Right. And I imagine like once you even make that crossing, holding those points across the river might be a little bit more difficult. So things like artillery, smoke, air support are probably going to be pretty key in any sort of pushes that you make.
Absolutely, yeah. Smoke is the big one on this, especially because of the river having no sight blockers as well. The shorelines do, but the river itself has none. So smoke crossings, especially flares, will be extremely important for making sure you don't just rush straight into an MG with no cover to get behind. So yeah, it's exciting. We've had some phenomenal games on it. It's a real fight. Yeah, I'm so looking forward to this one.
Okay. So that is Rapido River Crossing, our 4v4 coming to all game modes. But I know we also have a 2v2 coming from the community to the official map pool.
do.
What do we got here?
Yeah, so we've mentioned before that we started spinning up the wheels of the community map pool again, which is great. This map is by Myth called Santuario or Sanctuary. This is a beautiful 2v2 map. I believe it was one of the runner-ups in the last mapping competition, GB's mapping competition, and it's one that we immediately pulled aside and we'll do a little bit more work on this and we'll make sure it sees the light of day. Yeah, it's an excellent, very very simple but very unique 2v2 because even though it has urban elements, the buildings are laid out in a way that they're not as useful as they might be in other maps, like Torrente. There are loads of boarded up windows, there are loads of blind spots all over the place. So yeah, it makes a very unique 2v2 map.
Okay, so again, this 2v2 is going to be coming to all game modes. And I do have a quick word here from Myth. So Myth says, quote, "The creation of Santuario was ultimately inspired by the rest of the mapping community. I wanted to scratch the creative itch I got after seeing the entries in GB Pirate's mapping competition. With Santuario, I wanted to create a scenic portrayal of a quiet town in Italy, untouched by the horrors of war, somewhere you'd want to visit. In the end, it proved to be a massive test of endurance, as mapping is a huge undertaking, and can take hundreds of hours. I learned so much from taking part in the mapping competition and from working with Will over at Relic. I wanted to thank all the players and judges who left such wonderful feedback. It means more than you can imagine." So thank you, Myth, for those words. So Will, when you sort of approached this with Myth, what sort of work did you two do to get this from where he had it to where we wanted it to be to get into the official map pool?
It's funny, like Myth had done incredible work getting everything laid out, and it's not until you actually take the map files themselves that you start feeling how different everyone approaches mapping. Because we made a tutorial series to go through the bare bones of how to get started, and you'd sort of assume that that's the approach people would take. They'd do it exactly like I did because that's how I showed you. No,
The Will Ward approach.
no, far from.
Yeah.
And there's little things that we didn't cover in those tutorials that intrepid mappers like Myth would add to their own maps, and you think, oh, that's very interesting. It could be problematic. It could cause problems. But in general, the map was extremely well made, and there was loads of just blood, sweat, and tears into its design and its art. It's a very pretty map. But as with everything, there's little bugs that we had to find. Things like uncrushable items that probably weren't intended to be there, or we didn't know that they were uncrushable at the time when they were put in there. Things like the way that the streams that run through the map were designed had to be remade. Little teething problems like that. But that's just the nature of the beast.
Okay. So it seems like from my testing in some early builds that there are 3 pretty distinct lanes in this map. I'm wondering if you could talk about those.
Yeah, that's one of the highlights of this map. It has three very distinct areas, and because it's only a 2v2 map, there's only so much you can do to hold the majority of those areas.
Right.
So the main central area of the map is an urban, essentially looks like a village or a small inlet town. So, as I mentioned, loads of boarded up windows on buildings, but because the buildings are still there, they are sight and movement blockers. So they do impact gameplay still. But it's got courtyards and nice walls and flowers and things like that. So it looks very, very pretty. That will play pretty much like your normal CQC area. So you'll need close range units like assault grenadiers, and you need to be careful using long range, long sight weapons like AT guns. On the south side of the map, you have a sprawling beach, which is kind of nestled up against the village and town. This has got some very large rock blockers, which will not be removed throughout the course of the game. They're permanent. But the beaches themselves are quite nice and open, and they provide loads of flanking routes. So if you're an avid Kettenkrad user, for example, you could take advantage and slip around the site of the enemy and try and capture the back of the map. And generally, you'll be required to build your own defenses in this sort of area because it's a beach, it's quite open. And then towards the north of the map is a more dense forested area, which also kind of nestles against the top side of the town. This has got some. It's got more cover. There's not much heavy cover across the map. It's quite a light cover heavy map. But because it's forested, there's a lot more space for your infantry to nestle up against cover. So probably more dangerous for your light vehicle gameplay.
Right.
But there's a big cutoff that basically bisects the town from the forest. So players who advance into the forest and hold it very well will be cautious to make sure that they don't end up being cut off, and need to make sure that their HQs remain secured to that northern section of the map.
Okay. Yeah. And again, I imagine because you have so much ground to cover and there's only 2 of you on your team, you're probably gonna have to rely on some of those more defensive items like mines or bunkers or whatever the case may be, different MGs to set up to ensure that no one's trying to get around on.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
Right?
You
Yeah.
need to pick your battles and make sure you keep your infantry concentrated where they're most required and let everything else do the rest.
Okay, very exciting. So very very happy to get this map from Myth and get it into the official map pool. Again, that is Santuario, our 2v2 coming to all game modes, along with Rapido River Crossing, our 4v4, and those 2 maps will be going live in our Orchid Spider update 1.9. Will, thank you so much for joining us and covering all of this with us today. I know I'm excited to see players get their hands on these maps. Again, I think they're some of our most beautiful maps that we've put in the game, so really pleasing on the eyes, and I can't wait to see them destroyed and all the carnage that will be wrought on them. With that said, thank you again, Will, and we'll move on to our next segment.
Thank you.
All right, now we are going to be covering the all-new Live Observer mode for Company of Heroes 3. I'm joined by someone very special from the team. Angus, do you want to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and what do you do on Company of Heroes?
Hey, I'm Angus Graham. I'm a programmer here at Relic, and I've been working on the Replay and Observer feature mostly lately.
Okay, great. Very exciting to have you here. I know tournament organizers and content creators and players just in general have really been looking forward to getting this feature into the game. So if you're set, do you just want to jump in and take a look at it?
Let's do it.
Okay, Angus. So now we are in the main menu. I know the first thing players will want to know is how do I actually observe a live match that's happening right now? I'm guessing I go to multiplayer.
Correct.
All right, so from here we have observer mode right at the bottom. So if we click through here, obviously we're playing on a test server so that we don't have matches to look at right now. But can you maybe talk me through what a player would see once this has been pushed live in our Orchid Spider update?
Sure. So it's just like the custom game browser, but it shows games of all types that are playing for which observing is permitted. It also shows you if there's a delay that's required, then joining the game where that delay hasn't elapsed yet, you'll have to wait until that elapses, and you'll only be able to watch with that delay as a minimum. And you also have the option to sort and filter at the top there. So if you drop down the sort by ranking, you can see the different sorting options. And if you click that filter button, you can see the different ways that you can filter. Now, some of these options will cause other options to gray out because they're not all mutually compatible, but
Right.
that gives you a good idea of the filter options that are available.
Okay, amazing. So this should make finding what you're looking for a little bit easier, depending on your tastes, or if you're trying to find a specific match. Okay. So I think the other question players might have is, what options do I have available in terms of hosting a match and making it observable to others? So I've just opened a custom game lobby here. And if I head to game settings, we obviously have made a few changes here as well. The game options up top should be familiar for players, but can you talk me through some of the settings that we have now down here?
Yeah, so obviously whether or not you want the game to be observable is an option that you can change. Set the delay as we talked about before. And it may be that you are hosting a game like a tournament game, and you want to make sure that nobody could possibly have someone on the inside watching, but you still want people who are trusted to be able to join the game. And in that case, you can turn on the enable password option and set the password. Or maybe you just, for your own reasons, only want to let friends of yours observe the game. That's an option you have.
Okay, don't tell anyone my password, okay? This is very, very secure.
Security.
So I think that's it in terms of some of the settings for the lobbies and for the game list. But I know we actually have some additional key bindings and shortcuts that players can take a look at. And I know we had some of these already when we rolled out replays last year. But can you maybe talk me through some of the additional ones that we have here now?
Sure. So just like before, that's right. We have hotkeys for slower and faster, and toggling the fog of war, which is important stuff if you're talking about the game, maybe, or presenting it as it's playing. But the new what we call tournament mode, which I'll be showing you later, has some new options. So there are some features in here that are best for tournament mode. Flip sides is one. Sometimes you have maybe you turn the map upside down, so blue is on the other side, and you wish that the tug of war bar and the tickets bar could be the other way around as well. Well, here's a shortcut to flip the sides. And it'll resort the screen. I'll go into this when we look at tournament mode, but it does a couple other things at the same time. And we have another option there, Shift Alt 1 and 2, which will instantly switch to the player in slot 1 and the player in the first slot on the second team. That allows you to very quickly change the fog of war to that player if you have the fog of war set to player's point of view rather than all, which is maybe an important thing if you want to demonstrate who can see what during a game, or just if you want to know that.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you a lot more information about what players are reacting to in the moment. Very cool. So I think that's it in terms of messing around in the menus here, Angus. But I think we should actually jump into a live game and show off some of these new features and settings for this mode. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right, Angus. So we are here back in the observer mode game list. And it looks like we have a game between our dev team happening. So let's maybe jump in. Is there anything that you wanted to call out here in this view before we jump in to observe the match?
Oh, it's pretty straightforward, but you can see how long the game has been going on, which might be a useful thing to know. And it's nice to be able to see the battle groups that the people have selected and so on.
Okay, cool. So let's click observe and jump right in. Okay, so it looks like we are in our match, and of course it's starting at the beginning of the match. So, Angus, you can probably explain this better than I can, but I know, Company of Heroes 3 is a simulation, which means, we're not going to be able to jump right to where the game is live. We kind of have to play everything from start to finish. Is that right?
That is true. You start at time 0, but it is possible, of course, to speed up. And that's going to depend on how fast your computer can simulate the game. But if you've got a real beefy machine, you could go 4 times or perhaps even faster. There's a new button that we've got here, which will play up to live as fast as possible.
Okay.
That's the one. Of course, if there's a delay enforced, then that's what it would play up to rather than strictly live.
Okay. So this view looks pretty standard. I know players who have used the replay mode will be familiar with it already. So we do have this is our caster mode. But you did mention earlier our new tournament mode. So do you think we should maybe take a look at that?
That's right. That little green light there tells you that you're in caster mode, and that used to be a 2-state button, but now it's a 3-state. And if you go ahead and click it, here we are in tourney mode.
Okay.
So what that's done is taken the 2 teams out of the corners and instead given you 4 players across the bottom. And as you can see, the left 2 teams will default to the blue team. The left 2 players will default to the blue team in slots 1 and 2 from that team, and the right 2 will default to slots 1 and 2 from the red team. But you can then use those 4 drop downs to set them to look at any 4 players that you like. Now, this is just a 2v2 game, so there's no others to choose from. But there's nothing to stop you if you had a 4v4 of putting red players on that side if that's what you preferred to see.
Yeah. So if we had a larger game mode, we would obviously have more players to pick from here, and we could sort of customize this bottom view with like who do we actually want to be looking at right now.
That's right. And in addition to having those 4 players at the bottom, all the players are represented in the top corners now.
Right.
So if it was a 4v4, instead of those 4 roundels that you see, you'd see 8 roundels.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because normally, if we actually jump back and look at sort of the standard view or the caster view, we have the GUC or the global unit command for each side here, and we would have to rotate between the players to look at those. But again, if we jump back to tournament mode, what did you say you were calling this internally? The mega GUC?
It's a bit silly, but in code I called it the mega GUC. That's right. As you can see, when you hover over those roundels, you can see a GUC pop up. And if you click the roundel, it's a two-state that will make the GUCs stay up there. And there's no vehicles in this game yet, but just like the regular GUC, it will turn into a two-line GUC if the player has vehicles as well as regular units.
Okay.
Oh, there's some.
Yeah, we can see some for the DAC player. I think that's Jason right now. Very cool. I like the customizability here in that, like, I could have it appear for one player or for two or for everyone. I could have them all disappear if I don't like it. I think that's really handy. And like you said, we would have a couple extra buttons here if this was in fact a 4v4. Very cool. So I guess it should also be stated here, Angus, that a lot of the improvements that we've made as we've sort of developed the live observer mode are also going to be applied to the replay mode. Is that correct?
That is right.
Okay.
And I'll show you something else kind of cool is next to that three-state button, which switches modes, there is a live stats button. So if you go ahead and click that, you can see the same stuff that you would normally see at the end of the game, updating live as the game plays.
Okay, so same menus. We've got performance and efficiency, and yeah, they are being updated live as we go through. We have the graphs, and again, we can toggle people on and off depending on who we want to look at. So army value, resource flow, points held, and of course we can also see the units. But here it looks like we have to select the player that we want, right?
That's right.
Okay, very cool. And I do like this this UI here on the right hand side where we could easily toggle between people. Very cool. Very, very, very handy feature. Was there anything else that you wanted to show off here with the live stats?
I've got something cool with stats to show you when it comes to kills, but that's coming up when we show the different states that the player panels at the bottom can go into.
Okay. So let's. I'm just kind of focusing on some of the action here. I don't know what to look at because I know we're mostly looking at UI, but we have our dev team furiously duking it out here on Santuario, our latest map coming in Orchid Spider. So we've talked about the live stats. We've talked about some of the main UI elements here with the tournament mode. But obviously we have these 4 panels here down at the bottom. Where do we want to start with this?
Well, I guess I'll start by pointing out that above one of the player panels right now, you can see a little icon. Yeah, and that's showing you upgrades and buildings that are under construction so that you can see what's happening.
We have our battle group panel here at the bottom, and I believe it shows battle groups. If they haven't chosen a battle group yet, it'll show the 3 that they have available to them. But once they've locked one in, then I believe it will actually show the progression through their battle group tech tree. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right.
Okay.
So it's actually pretty much the same thing that appears in the caster mode in the upper corners, just shrunken down a little bit.
Okay. So, again, very standard. We have all of the resources for the player here. Anything else that you kind of want to talk about with this view here for the players?
I think that just about covers it.
Okay. So should I start toggling between these mysterious arrows here on the left-hand side?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So what do we got here?
So before I mentioned that the upgrades and buildings that were under construction appear above the panel, but once an upgrade is complete, you'll be able to see a history of the upgrade that each player has here in this panel. Mm-hmm. And once it extends too wide, then there'll be arrows to scroll through them.
Okay, very cool. And last but certainly not least, I believe we have a separate unit panel here.
That's right. So each time you select a unit on the screen, if that unit is owned by one of the 4 players that you have selected into these panels, then it will appear in the panel here in the third rotation. And by default, if you haven't selected anything, then the initially spawned squad for each of those 4 players will appear in this panel.
Oh, I think I found a bug here, Angus. Uh-oh.
Oh, oh, geez. Okay,
Yeah, we're just toggling between the same ally players, but don't worry, we'll have that ironed out by the time this goes live for players, because I know we've still got a couple of weeks. We're doing
definitely.
this a little bit ahead of time. But yeah, I really find this view very handy, as you know, you can sort of just jump between the different units for the selected players. You know, if I wanted to quickly compare, you know, the stats between, let's say, this rifleman squad and this engineer squad, that's available to the player, or to the viewer at any point. You can kind of very quickly see the matchup between the units that are involved here. Is there anything else that you want to call out here? I know there is something new that we want to show off, but just want to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything.
Yeah, so on this page, you'll notice that on the icon for the dude is a little kill symbol and a little number next to it. And this is something that's been requested, which is to be able to see the kills without having to go into the live stats.
Yeah, yeah. This is I know players have wanted easier access to this information. So I'm glad that we've finally been able to get that into the game here. Let's see if I can actually find something. There we go. So these pioneers have killed 2 infantry, but you can also see vehicles, buildings, and friendlies destroyed if by chance you're a little bit careless with some grenades or artillery. Yeah, very cool. I'm wondering, is there anything else from this specific panel that you want to talk about or show off?
Well, as you can see, you can select vehicles. You can also click on garrisonable buildings, and if the unit is garrisoned by one of those 4 players, then you can see that works just as if you were looking at one of your own garrison buildings in the regular UI.
Okay.
One change that was made was that in the regular caster mode, when you're looking through the eyes of one player, you'll get all the events streaming through on the left-hand side in the event queue for that player. That's a bit overwhelming if we show all the events for 8 different players, as you can probably imagine. So we do show events for all players, but we filter them down to just the important kills.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think a lot of that info will be a little bit overwhelming. So it's good to know that we're just getting the important stuff with the event queues, and players may have seen that already pop up. So aside from the event queues, you know, the new layout here, I am kind of curious, Angus. You know, you were obviously incredibly involved with getting this sort of up and running. But you know, from my side, I don't know what a programmer does. So I just kind of feel like you do some coding behind the scenes, then it all just sort of magically appears on screen for me. So can you maybe talk maybe a little bit about, like, you know, what are you actually doing from your side to get all of these systems up and running the way that we want them to be?
Sure. So there's a few people involved. One of the designers, Marco, came up with the original design, and he was in some conversation with some people from our community to figure out what people wanted most. And then basically I worked with him and with a visual designer to mock it all up. And I was able to luckily reuse parts of UI and code from the Replay as an Observer system that we already had. So we were able to get this done in one milestone, as we call it, which we're really happy about. Obviously, I'm not the only programmer around, so I can't take full responsibility for it. But yeah, so there's a few groups and quite a few people involved in getting it done.
Okay, cool. So we did just see an event queue for Jason losing his squad up here, so we were able to jump to that. So that was great to see that in action. But yeah, Angus, I know this was a lot of hard work from you and several other folks on the team to get this system up and running. So very glad that we can finally roll this out to players in our next upcoming update here. And you know, like we said earlier, there's a couple bugs and polish things that we need to do in the next few days here, but plenty of time to get that done before players get their hands on the games. You know, I guess final thoughts, Angus. You know, are you? Is there anything that you're hoping to see from players as they play around with the new observer mode and the tournament view? Are you just sort of excited to see people making use of it?
I'm hoping to get some feedback about what people like and what they would like to see. There's always the possibility that we can improve it going forward. So yeah, let us know on the forums if you have input.
Okay, amazing. So yeah, so keep that feedback coming, folks. And I think we'll probably just wrap things up there. Angus, thanks so much for showing off your work with the new live observer mode. And we will end things there. Thanks again.
Thank you, and thanks for finding that bug. I will go get fixing that.
All right. So that's going to do it for today. A huge thank you to the team for joining me to show off all of the cool things that they are putting into the Orchid Spider update. Of course, as always, if you want to stay up to date on all the latest Company of Heroes news, you're going to want to follow us on your platform of choice: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch at Company of Heroes. You can find our forums at community.companyofheroes.com. Join the Discord server at discord.gg/Company of Heroes. The Orchid Spider patch notes will go up on Steam the morning of November 26th, so keep an eye out for those. That same day, we're going to be chatting with the balance team to cover all the multiplayer changes coming to the game. So be sure to keep an eye out for that live stream that morning. So thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Take care.